Hi, thanks for watching. My name is Brian Cafferelli. I'm on the QuickBase product marketing team. I've been with the company for about 8 years now, and I'm really excited to be with you here today. I'm going to be talking about some builder improvements that we've added to QuickBase since the last Empower conference. Just to let you know, this is a quick hit video. It's going to be about 10 minutes. All right, let's get started. So there are 4 topics I'm going to cover today. I'm going to cover the new user role formula function, our new type of formula field that works with multi-select text, improvements that we've made to our field dependency diagram, and finally, being able to view sample data in field properties. All right, let's start by talking about the user role formula function. So this is a feature we released last summer in August. And the business challenge this is meant to address really has to do with managing access to your data. So I'm going to explain this kind of with an example. So imagine that you're using QuickBase to track sales opportunities, and you have a business rule where your frontline sales reps, they need to be able to discount when they're working deals, but they should be limited to applying a discount of up to 10%. Now, on the other hand, the managers that they work with, the sales managers, should be able to apply a discount of up to 15% instead. Before we added this formula function, folks had to often add a users table if they didn't already have one. They had to add a related roles table, and then all of the opportunities would flow down from that. So what we've done, we've made it a lot simpler. We've added a new function to our formula language. You can see it here. It's called user roles. And the simplest way to use it is to put the words ID in quotes when you actually call the function. And what it's going to do, it's going to send you back a list of the numeric IDs for every role that whoever's logged in currently has access to in that application. Because remember, you can assign multiple roles to the same user. So to give you a bit of a clearer idea of how this works, I'm going to show you an example here in QuickBase. All right, so I've got my application here where I'm tracking sales opportunities. You can see I've got some basic details about who I'm working with. And one of my tabs is used to forecast the details of that deal, when I think it's going to close, what I think it's worth, things like that. And as part of that, you can see that we have this discount percentage field. So here's how you can use our new user role function to set up a custom data rule. So imagine we want to set up data validation here, where if I'm a frontline sales rep and I try to set a discount that's above 10%, QuickBase is going to stop me, and it's going to remind me of that business rule so that I understand how to react. So to set that up, we're going to go into settings, and we'll go into advanced settings. When you go to the bottom of the page here, you'll see the rule. I've already set it up for convenience's sake here. And the first thing that you'll notice is we are working with the numeric IDs for the roles. It's kind of like a record ID, but for a user role. In this case, the ID of my sales rep role is number 10, and the ID of my sales manager role is number 11. Now, you may be asking, how did you know which ID goes with which role? Now, the way to do that, I can come in here and open a new tab, and I'll show you how I found that. So if I click into users, then I can go into manage roles. Once I do, of course, I get a list of all the roles in the application, and let's take sales rep as an example. If I click into sales rep, and then I look at the address bar at the top of the screen, let me switch to windowed mode here to show you. You can see that at the end of the address, we have this role ID, and in this case, it's 10. So that's where I found those numeric IDs to use this function. Okay, let's go back to the custom data rule. So you can see I have 2 conditions set up here, one for each of the 2 roles we talked about. So what this is saying is, if the user's role is number 10, and they're trying to set a value in the discount percentage that's greater than 10, then don't allow the data to be saved. And instead, you should show an error message. And in this case, the error message, lets people know you're allowed to set discounts of up to 10%. So please go ahead and adjust that. And if you have an issue, you should talk to your manager about it. Now you can see we have similar logic below for our sales manager, which is set to role number 11. And it's capping that discount percentage at 15%, as we saw in the slide presentation. By the way, if you haven't built a custom data rule before, you're not familiar with them, my colleague Daniel is having a separate session that goes into more depth about what those are for and how to build those. So definitely check that out. You can look at the Resource Center for details on how to access that. One other thing I want to say, just very briefly before we test out the rule, is that what I'm showing here is a simple example, but in your application, your logic may look a little different. So if you do assign multiple roles to the same user, then you may need to have a few other rules in the conditions here, and we've got some documentation on that to help you out. Okay, so now let's hit exit settings, and let's see the rule in action. So right now, I'm an administrator in this application, but if I come here to test a role, test as another role, let's see what the experience looks like for a sales rep. So if I come in here and open the deal forecast, let's say I try to change this to 20%. All right, and there's that custom error message. I'm not able to make that change. Okay, what if I set it to 9%? Is that gonna be all right? Yep, 9% is fine because that's below that 10% threshold. Okay, so next let's talk about this new field type that we added in, again, August of last year. It's a formula multi-select text field type. And when I tried to create some slides for this, I realized, it's gonna be a lot easier to show rather than tell in this case. So if we return to QuickBase, I'm gonna show you a simple app here that tracks software bugs. And you can see I've got a table report. And if you're anything like me, one of my pet peeves in QuickBase is having a report that just has too much stuff on it. Reports are really great to help you see a lot of data at a glance. And then you can, you can select between them and figure out which individual records do you need to actually click into to learn more. You can, of course, click on the I to do that. When I look at this report, I can see that there are so many columns here that I can't even see them all at once. I can come here to collapse the dynamic filters or maybe scroll over to the right to see all of them. And there's an easy way that we can make this better. So as we look at each of these columns, what I ask myself is, how important are each of these data points? Do I always need to see every one of these at a glance? Or can I somehow simplify or summarize the information better so that I have a more streamlined view that's a lot easier to see and read? And so what I did, this is my before. Let's take a look at another version of the same report. So here you can see this is a lot more straightforward. No scrolling is needed. And there's a new column that you can see over here on the right called tags. So this uses our new field type. So you can see here that this is a formula field and it uses our new formula type, multi-select text. And what I'm using this for is I'm essentially summarizing the key points, the key takeaways from several different columns, and I'm combining them to display in a single column. So for example, we have the security issue field here. It's a checkbox field. Now, if a bug is a security issue, then that's remarkable, right? That's something that you would want to prioritize. You'd want to look into that. So this line here is saying, if that box is checked, then include a tag in the list that's called security issue. Same thing if an issue exists in production, you can have a production issue tag, but if that checkbox is false, then that means that the bug was found in some development or testing environment. And while that does need to be logged, it's not as big of an issue. Same thing here with the priority field. So I've actually designed a bit of a different label for the tag. You can see that we have the value very high, and I'm creating a tag that says P0, critical issue. If that dropdown is high, then I'm calling it P1, major issue for the tag. This is a really flexible capability because while you do have the ability to set up these conditions, they're not required. You could just say, show me the values from all 5 of these fields in this example, all in one column. So for instance, the discovery method for a bug just means, was it reported by a customer or it was something that was reported internally by an employee? Well, let's say that you always want to know the discovery method. This is including a tag, so it's a text field, and whatever the value is for discovery method, it's just always going to create a corresponding tag with that same value. Okay, so next I'm going to talk about the improvements that we made last summer to our fields dependency diagram. So before I talk about what the dependency diagram is, again, I'm going to talk a little bit about the business challenge that we were going after in building the feature. So imagine that you are working for a company that's using QuickBase, and you're responsible for the maintenance of one of their QuickBase apps. Maybe this is an app that you inherited. Maybe this is an app that you built, but you built it months, maybe even over a year ago. So when issues crop up and you're asked to troubleshoot some problem in the application, what you had in mind when you built that field or that report that's having a problem, it may not be that fresh in your mind. So I've got this formula field here. It's called line item total. Let's say that some of your colleagues tell you that it's not calculating properly. It's not giving the result that they expect. So, okay, you come into the field settings and you see what this formula is actually about. Now, in this case, you can see, well, it's multiplying a unit price and a quantity. Sounds logical. It's very simple. So what could actually be going wrong here? Well, in reality, QuickBase has this very powerful and dynamic capability to calculate data. Just because this formula is just the two numbers multiplied together, it doesn't mean that those unit price or quantity fields are not in and of themselves calculated. So there can be multiple levels to how these calculations actually work. Let's take a look at an example. So I have an inventory manager app here. You can see I'm tracking orders. And if we come into this order that Amber has placed, we can see that field we were just looking at here under the line items. Here's my line item total. So one way that I like to get into field properties quickly is just coming to the column head and then clicking on field properties. Okay, so here's our unit price, here's our quantity. What do we do from here? Well, if you scroll up to the top, you'll see that there's a tab for dependency diagram. Now, when we click into that, you can see that the line item total is based on the unit price and the quantity. Okay, great. We already knew that from the other tab. But now we can actually start clicking on these subfields to explore further. So because this circle is red, this means that the quantity field is just entered by the user. So there are no subfields, there are no additional levels of calculation under that one. However, the unit price is blue. We can see that it is also a formula here. So when I click on that, we can figure out what fields is the unit price formula based on. And now again, we see two more fields. One of them is blue. And if I keep clicking through, eventually we get to a line where they're all red. That's how I can tell them at the end, because none of these fields on the right-hand side are actually calculated. And here's where I get a better picture of how the line item total actually comes together. We can see that we have a list price over on our products table, and then it's looked up to our line item table where it's snapshotted. And this helps me understand what other field should I go look into. So if this field looks normal, then maybe the problem is with the unit price, and then I can kind of step along that way. Okay, so finally, I want to talk about viewing sample data in field properties. This is something we came out with in January. Now again, imagine you're troubleshooting a QuickBase app. Maybe it's an app you didn't build, and you're trying to just kind of figure out what's going on. You're trying to remember how you had put the app together. Let's say that someone was confused about how this field was working. And I click into it, and I see it's called Current Plan Raw. And maybe I had an idea of what the problem was, but when I look at the field name, I think, why is that called -raw? Are there other versions of this field for current plan that are not -raw? And if so, how are they different? Now, of course, you could always exit out of settings, go look into the data, maybe run a report that includes this field and take a look at what kind of data is in that column to kind of refresh your memory. But what we've actually done, we've expanded the field settings page with this sample data link. So what this is going to do is it's going to search through the records in the application and in the table, I'm sorry. And the first record it finds where this field is not blank, it's going to show you what that data actually is. So now that I see, oh, QuickBase Premier trial plan, this starts to jog my memory and helps me to start understanding what the field is actually used for. Now, one thing some of you might be wondering is, why don't you just show the example automatically when I visit the field settings page? The reason is that one of the things that makes QuickBase so powerful is that it's dynamic. Some of the most successful QuickBase applications are used by hundreds or even thousands of different users. So the data in tables can change very frequently and sometimes without warning. So by clicking on the show link, we're not just giving you a hypothetical example, we are giving you an example of live data that exists in the table right now. All right, so to recap, we talked about our new user role formula function, our new field type, the formula multi-select text field, the improvements that we made to the field dependency diagram, as well as being able to view sample data in field properties. Thanks so much for watching and enjoy Virtual Empower.